They called me Charity Case Charlie behind my back, sometimes to my face. The Hendersons, Richard and Vanessa, would laugh from their air-conditioned ranch house porch while I mucked out stalls in 100-degree heat. "Look at him," Richard would say loud enough for me to hear. "Working for free like some kind of idiot. Boy's got no future." I'd keep my head down, pitch the soiled hay, and say nothing. Let them laugh. Let them think I was desperate, stupid, or both. What they didn't know was that every insult sharpened my resolve. Every mocking comment added fuel to a fire they couldn't see burning inside me. I was 23 when I first knocked on the Henderson Ranch door, hat in hand, asking for work. They'd looked at me like I was dirt on their expensive boots. "We're not hiring," Vanessa had said, her perfectly manicured hand on the door. "I'll work for free," I'd replied. "Just need to learn the business." Richard had laughed then, a cruel bark of amusement. "Free labor? Well, why not? We can always use another idiot." That was 7 years ago. 7 years of cleaning stalls, mending fences, feeding livestock, and absorbing everything I could about running a ranch. 7 years of living in a one-room apartment above the feed store, eating ramen and saving every penny I could. 7 years of being invisible while they threw money at designer trucks and exotic vacations. And now, standing in this dusty auction house, watching the auctioneer's gavel fall, I finally understood what patience tasted like. Victory. Sweet, hard-earned victory. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. The Henderson Ranch sprawled across 2,000 acres of prime Texas grassland, established in the 1870s by Richard's great-great-grandfather. By the time Richard inherited it, the place was a well-oiled machine. Cattle operation, quarter horses, hay production, even some oil rights, the kind of legacy people kill for. Richard had inherited it all at 35, along with his father's wealth and his mother's arrogance. He'd married Vanessa 2 years later, a former pageant queen who treated the ranch like a country club. Neither of them had worked a real day in their lives. That's where I came in. I'd grown up on a small farm that went under when I was 15. Bank foreclosure. My father died 2 years later, broken by the loss. My mother moved to Houston to live with her sister. I stayed, bouncing between ranch hand jobs, learning everything I could. But everywhere I went, it was the same story. Temporary work, low pay, no future. Until I had an idea. What if I offered to work for free? Not forever. Just long enough to learn everything about running a successful operation. The Hendersons were known for their profitable ranch. If I could learn their methods, absorb their business practices, understand their contacts and contracts, I could build something of my own someday. So I swallowed my pride and knocked on their door. Richard and Vanessa thought I was a joke, a charity case. That was fine. Let them think that. While they lounged by their pool and took weekend trips to Aspen, I worked. I learned which feed produced the best weight gain, which breeding lines produced championship horses, how to negotiate with buyers, how to maintain equipment. Every secret of their success I absorbed like a sponge, and I saved. My apartment above the feed store cost $200 a month. I made it work with odd jobs, helping neighboring ranches during roundup, fixing engines, anything that paid cash. Every dollar that didn't go to rent or basic food went into a savings account. No beer at the bar, no new clothes, no truck payment. I rode a beat-up bicycle to the Henderson Ranch each morning. "Look at Charlie," Vanessa would say to her friends during their poolside parties. "Still riding that pathetic bicycle. Some people just don't have ambition." They didn't see ambition. They saw exactly what I wanted them to see. A simple man, grateful for scraps, no threat to anyone. Meanwhile, my savings grew. 5,000 became 10,000. 10 became 20. After 3 years, I had $45,000. I started taking online courses in ranch management, agricultural business, and accounting. The library had free internet. I studied every night after 14-hour days of free labor. The Hendersons never asked what I did with my evenings. They never asked anything about me. I was furniture, useful furniture that didn't require payment. Richard would occasionally toss me a 20. "Buy yourself a beer, Charlie. You earned it." I'd thank him, pocket the money, and add it to my savings. Around year 4, I noticed something. The Hendersons were spending more than the ranch was making. New luxury trucks every year, a pool house addition, Vanessa's shopping trips to Dallas, Richard's collector cars. "Business is booming," Richard would brag to visitors. But I saw the books sometimes, left carelessly on the office desk. The profit margins were shrinking. They were leveraging assets, taking loans against the property. I said nothing. Just kept working, watching, learning, and saving. By year 5, my savings account held $78,000. I'd also learned something crucial. Several neighboring ranches were struggling. Small operations being squeezed by corporate consolidation and rising costs. I started helping them too, offering free advice, sharing what I'd learned. I built relationships, trust, a network. Mr. Peterson, who ran cattle on 600 acres, told me, "Charlie, you've got more sense in your little finger than Henderson has in his whole body. That man's riding for a fall." I just nodded. The Henderson ranch books were looking worse. I could see it in the small things: delayed equipment maintenance, cheaper feed, fewer hired hands for roundup. But Richard and Vanessa kept spending. A new sports car for her 40th birthday, a 2-week European vacation. Richard started drinking more, getting angry over small things. "Charlie," he'd yell across the barn, "this fence line is a mess. Can't you do anything right?" Never mind that I'd mentioned the fence needed replacement 6 months ago, and he'd said there was no budget for it. I'd fix it with wire and posts I bought myself. Then one afternoon I overheard Richard on the phone in his office. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was repairing a window frame nearby. "I understand the payment's late," Richard was saying, his voice tight. "We're having a temporary cash flow issue. The cattle sale next month will cover it." He was lying. The cattle sale was already committed to other debts. I'd seen the contracts. That night, I looked at my savings, $81,000. I made a decision. It was time to prepare for an opportunity. Everything changed on a scorching July morning when a man in a dark suit arrived at the Henderson Ranch. I was replacing boards on the horse barn when I saw Richard's face go pale as he read the papers the man handed him. Vanessa came out, and I heard her voice rise in panic. "What do you mean foreclosure proceedings? This is our ranch." The man left. Vanessa was crying. Richard was making frantic phone calls. I kept working, but my heart was racing. The moment I'd been quietly preparing for was approaching faster than I'd expected. Over the next 3 months, I watched the Henderson empire crumble. Equipment was sold off. Staff was let go. The prize horses went to auction. Richard aged 10 years in 10 weeks, his swagger replaced by desperate anxiety. Vanessa stopped hosting parties and started packing boxes. They never asked me to leave. Maybe they forgot I was there. Or maybe, in some desperate corner of Richard's mind, he hoped I'd maintain things until some miracle saved them. No miracle came. The bank scheduled a foreclosure auction for October 15th. The notice went up at the county courthouse, advertising 2,000 acres, buildings, equipment, water rights, and remaining livestock. Estimated value, $1.2 million. My savings account held $94,000, not enough to buy the whole ranch, but I'd been planning for this. I'd spent 6 months talking to banks, showing them my business plan, demonstrating my knowledge. I'd secured a commitment for a loan if I could come up with a 20% down payment and demonstrate operational expertise. 20% of $1.2 million was $240,000. Impossible, right? Wrong. I'd been talking to my network. Mr. Peterson and 4 other small ranchers were interested in a partnership. If we pooled resources, we could make it work. The morning of the auction arrived cold and clear. I put on my cleanest shirt, pressed my one good pair of jeans, and drove my ancient truck to the courthouse. The parking lot was full. Corporate buyers, investors, neighboring ranchers, everyone smelled opportunity. Inside the courthouse, Richard and Vanessa sat in the back row. She was crying quietly. He stared at nothing, broken. I took a seat in the middle, my heart pounding. The auctioneer stepped up. Lot 17, Henderson Ranch. 2,000 acres, improvements, water rights, livestock. Opening bid $100,000. Hands shot up. The price climbed quickly. 200,000, 300, 400. I stayed still, waiting. Corporate buyers dominated the bidding. It hit 800,000, and several bidders dropped out. 900. Only 3 bidders left, 2 corporations and 1 private investor. At 1 million, 1 corporation dropped. At 1.1 million, the second corporation nodded slowly. The private investor counted. 1.15 million, the auctioneer called. Silence. I raised my hand. 1.2 million. Every head in the room turned. Richard's face showed confusion, then recognition, then disbelief. The corporate buyer looked annoyed. 1.25, he countered. 1.3, I said calmly. Whispers filled the room. Who is that? Where's he getting that kind of money? The corporate buyer hesitated, calculating. 1.35. 1.4, I replied. The buyer shook his head and sat down. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. His gavel fell. Sold. To bidder 73. The room erupted in conversation. I stood, walked to the registration table, and signed the papers. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's voice. That's our Charlie. That's the boy who cleaned stalls. The paperwork took 2 hours. My banking consortium, my partners, my business plan, it all came together. The loan officer from First Texas Bank shook my hand. Mr. Morrison, congratulations. This is quite an achievement. I signed the final document, and the deed was mine, or rather ours, mine and my partners. But I'd have operational control. 7 years of patience had paid off. Outside, Richard was loading boxes into a moving truck. Vanessa sat in their car, refusing to look at anyone. I walked over. Richard saw me coming and straightened up, something like his old arrogance flickering across his face. Well, Charlie, guess you got what you wanted. Congratulations on screwing us over. I didn't screw anyone over, Mr. Henderson, I said quietly. I worked for 7 years for free. I learned everything I could. I saved every penny I made from other jobs. I built relationships and partnerships. I prepared for an opportunity. When it came, I was ready. You taught me a lot, including what not to do. What's that supposed to mean? It means you inherited something valuable and took it for granted. You spent money you didn't have on things you didn't need. You treated people like they were beneath you. And when trouble came, you had no reserves, no network, nobody willing to help. I learned from watching you. I'll never make those mistakes. Richard's face went red, but he had no comeback. What could he say? It was all true. Vanessa called from the car. Richard, let's go. I can't stand to be here anymore. He climbed into the truck without another word. I watched them drive away, trailing dust down the county road. Then I turned and looked at my ranch. The Henderson Ranch was gone. This was Morrison Ranch now. A new beginning. The first year was brutal. Partnership or not, we had debts to service, operations to rebuild, and a reputation to establish. But I knew every inch of that land. I knew which pastures were best for what season. I knew the equipment, the cattle, the water sources. My partners brought their own expertise and their own herds. Mr. Peterson knew hay production. Mike Chen specialized in horse breeding. Sarah Williams had marketing connections. Together, we were stronger than any of us alone. We worked 18-hour days. We rebuilt fences, repaired buildings, and negotiated new contracts. We cut costs that the Hendersons had ignored, switched to a better feed supplier, streamlined operations, eliminated waste. By spring, we were breaking even. By summer, we were profitable. I moved out of my apartment above the feed store and into the ranch house. It felt strange at first, sleeping in what had been Richard's master bedroom. But I'd earned it. Every callus on my hands, every early morning, every insult I'd swallowed. I'd earned this. Word spread through the ranching community. Charlie Morrison bought the Henderson place. Some people were impressed, others were skeptical. A few thought I'd gotten lucky, but the ones who knew me, the ones I'd helped over the years, they understood. This wasn't luck. This was strategy, patience, and hard work paying off. One evening, about 18 months after the auction, I stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie gold and purple. Mr. Peterson joined me, 2 beers in hand. "Hell of a thing, Charlie," he said, handing me a bottle. "You did it." "We did it," I corrected. "Couldn't have done it without the partnership." "Maybe, but it was your vision, your patience." He clinked his bottle against mine. To patience, I agreed. It tasted better than any victory could have. 3 years after the auction, Morrison Ranch was one of the most respected operations in the county. We'd expanded to 2,300 acres, acquired neighboring land from retiring ranchers. Our cattle won prizes at state fairs. Our quarter horses were in demand. We'd diversified into agritourism, hosting school groups and city families wanting to experience ranch life. I'd become the thing Richard Henderson had inherited but never appreciated. A true rancher, someone who understood that land is earned through respect, knowledge, and hard work. One afternoon, I was repairing a fence line when a familiar truck pulled up. I didn't recognize it at first. A beat-up Ford instead of the luxury vehicles they'd once driven. Richard Henderson climbed out. He'd aged considerably. Gray hair, deep lines in his face, humbler clothes. He walked over slowly. Mr. Morrison." "Charlie's fine," I said, setting down my tools. "What can I do for you?" I was in the area. Wanted to see the place." He looked around and something like pain crossed his face. "Looks good, better than when I had it." "Thank you." We stood in awkward silence. "I'm working construction now," Richard said finally, "in San Antonio. Vanessa left me 2 years ago. Married a lawyer," he laughed bitterly. "Guess she traded up." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" He wasn't hostile, just curious. "Actually, I think you are. You're not a cruel man, Charlie. I was. I see that now. What brings you here, Richard? I wanted to apologize for how I treated you. You worked for free for years, and I mocked you for it, called you stupid, treated you like you were nothing. You were the smartest person on that ranch, and I was too arrogant to see it. This was unexpected. I studied his face, looking for manipulation or angles. Found none. Just regret. "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "Thank you." "You knew, didn't you?" Richard asked. "That we were headed for bankruptcy. You saw it coming and positioned yourself perfectly." "I saw that you were spending more than you were making," I admitted. "But I didn't cause your problems. I just prepared for the possibility that the ranch might become available. If it hadn't, I'd have used what I learned to start something smaller. But you hoped it would. It wasn't quite a question. I hoped for an opportunity," I said honestly. "I didn't wish you harm, but I wasn't going to miss my chance either. You had 7 years to treat me like a person, to ask about my plans, to offer me a real job. You never did. You saw me as charity case, someone beneath you. That was your choice." Richard nodded slowly. "You're right. I had everything handed to me, and I took it for granted. Thought I was special because of my last name. You built something from nothing, and you appreciated it because you knew what nothing felt like." We stood there as the sun began to set, 2 men on different trajectories. "There's a construction crew working on our new barn," I said. "Foreman's looking for experienced hands, pays fair, and we feed lunch. If you're interested." Richard looked at me, surprise in his eyes. "After everything?" "After everything," I confirmed. "I don't hold grudges, Richard. I just wanted a fair shot. If you want to work hard and learn, there's a place here, but it's regular work, regular pay. No special treatment. Thank you." "Yes, I'd like that." We shook hands. His grip was different now, not aggressive, but genuine. A week later, Richard Henderson started work on the Morrison Ranch construction crew. He showed up on time, worked hard, and kept his head down. Sometimes I'd see him looking around at the land he used to own, and I wondered what he was thinking, but he never complained. He'd learned humility the hardest way possible, by losing everything. 5 years after buying the ranch, I stood in the same courthouse where the auction had taken place. This time, I was there for a different reason, receiving the County Rancher of the Year award from the Agricultural Commission. My partners were there, my crew, friends from the community. The commissioner gave a speech about innovation, sustainability, and community leadership. When he handed me the plaque, the room applauded. I thought about that kid on a bicycle 7 years ago, being mocked for working for free. I thought about the discipline it took to save every penny while living in a tiny apartment. I thought about the patience required to watch arrogant people waste opportunities while I prepared for mine. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "This award represents more than personal success. It represents what's possible when you combine hard work with strategy, when you build partnerships instead of empires, when you respect the land and the people who work it." 10 years ago, I had nothing but determination. Today, I have a ranch, incredible partners, and a community I'm proud to serve. To anyone starting from nothing, stay patient, stay humble, stay strategic. Your moment will come. The applause was genuine. Afterward, people congratulated me. Mr. Peterson clapped me on the back. "Hell of a speech, Charlie." Richard Henderson approached, cleaner clothes now, steadier on his feet. He'd been working for me for nearly 2 years. "Congratulations," he said, extending his hand. "You've earned everything you have." "Thank you, Richard, and thank you for the work you've been doing. The new barn looks great. It's good work, honest work." He paused. "I'm grateful for the chance. We'd never be friends exactly, too much history, but we'd found a kind of peace. Mutual respect born from hard lessons. That evening, I drove back to the ranch as the sun set behind the western hills. Morrison Ranch. My ranch. Our ranch. Built not on inheritance or luck, but on patience, planning, and the refusal to let mockery define me. The Hendersons had laughed when I cleaned stalls for free. They'd called me charity case, idiot, fool. Now I owned everything they'd lost, not through cruelty or revenge, but through simple preparation meeting opportunity. Sometimes the best response to mockery is silence, strategy, and success. Let them laugh. While they're laughing, you're learning. While they're spending, you're saving. While they're coasting, you're preparing. And when the moment comes, and it always comes, you're ready. They don't see you coming until it's too late. That's the sweetest victory of all. Thank you for listening to my story. It took 10 years to live it, and I'm honored you spent this time hearing about my journey from bicycle riding ranch hand to ranch owner. The road from nothing to something is never easy, but it's always worth it. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening to this story from? What country, what state, what small town or big city? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you enjoyed this story of patience, strategy, and hard-earned success, please subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this one. Tales of underdogs, justice, and the power of never giving up. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our community. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember, they can laugh at you today, but preparation and patience always have the last word. Stay humble, stay strategic, and never stop working toward your dreams.